Miami Hurricanes head coach Mario Cristobal said this morning, quote, "Your quarterback has to be an alpha." Yeah, I think Miami's got one of those now.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno. I'm a University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and also host of Locked On ACC. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. After practice today, we got to speak with head coach Mario Cristobal. Cam Ward also spoke to the media today. First time he goes face-to-face with the South Florida media. So Cristobal said, quote, "I'm really fired up about the way spring has gone. I want to finish it strong." And yeah, today, Thursday, was the last spring practice before the spring game on Saturday, which is going to be, the last official team activity for a few months. I say official because guys will keep going through the strength and conditioning program. They're going to keep working out. They're going to keep practicing kind of on their own. So Cam Ward, huge topic today, and Cristobal spoke on his new starting quarterback, who's only been in the facility for about 3 months. He says Ward earned, and he emphasized the word earned. He earned trust very quickly when it comes to his peers, the other players, when it comes to coaches and staff members. He was able to earn that trust in a short period of time. He says that Ward, every waking free moment, is up in the office working, studying film. Obviously, he spends a lot of time doing the physical workouts. Cristobal mentioned that Ward has been doing extra work with his wide receivers and tight ends, and says that, sometimes he'll give these guys instructions. They'll have little powwows after practice and after plays on how to get on the same page because, of course, Ward hasn't been here, hasn't played with these guys up until, January when he started working out with them. So you have to build that trust. You have to build that chemistry very quickly. And this reinforces something that we talked about shortly after Ward arrived on campus, that he's conducting himself like a professional and is trying to conduct his business. And when I don't mean like, business like the off the field interests. I mean like the on field and the football stuff, conducting his business in a way that an NFL quarterback would. And he got that, didn't officially, declare for the NFL draft, didn't get to that point of no return. But for a couple of months there, he was working out with NFL quarterback coaches, and he really was thinking he was going to make that jump to the NFL. So he got a taste and an idea of what National Football League preparation is like, and he's tried to take that to Miami. And it really seems to me, in hearing from Ward and hearing from Mario Cristobal talking about Cam Ward, that he's putting everything into this last collegiate season, because he knows, again, the lasting impression that he can make in his final collegiate year before hoping to be possible first-round NFL draft pick. That's obvious. He wouldn't have been that if he had entered the draft this year. That's why he's not in the draft this year. He wants to become that next year, and he understands that between now and next April, and that only continues once you get into the NFL, of course. But between now and next April, he's got to live, breathe, and sleep football. And it doesn't sound to me like, outside of fishing, Ward has a whole lot of hobbies. It seems like football makes up most of his life. Cristobal mentioned that he even comes in on Saturdays to do extra work. And as I referenced at the top, Mario, he referred to Cam Ward as an alpha and said, quote, "Your quarterback needs to be an alpha." And, what goes into being an alpha doesn't necessarily mean like who yells the loudest and stuff like that. I think in Ward's case, he is very personable. He comes off that way. And he's in constant communication with his guys. He's taken his offensive linemen out to dinners, which as a quarterback, that's always a nice thing to do because, you want to sort of build that bond with the guys who are going to be literally protecting you on Saturdays this fall. He takes his O-lineman out to dinner. He takes them to, Texas de Brazil and lets them eat their body weight, I'm sure, in that meat that they have out there. So Cam Ward, he also spoke to the media on Thursday. He opened up by saying that, so far Miami, and not just the city, but the campus, the football program, everything, Miami has been everything he expected since he came here. Quote, the culture's perfect for what Cristobal is doing, he said. And something you'll notice if you watch back that Ward interview is the way that he talks about Miami's football team. Keep in mind, he hasn't actually taken a real in-game snap here, and he's only been here for a few months, but he talks about his teammates and he talks about, things that happened on the field last year as if he's been here for years. So you can tell that he has very quickly immersed himself and indoctrinated himself on everything football, because when you hear Ward talking about the way certain guys are developing, if you didn't know any better, you'd say, oh, this guy has been Miami's quarterback for at least a couple of years. So he's really immersed himself in the whole team thing. Something that Ward mentioned that I thought was interesting. I didn't realize this. Obviously, I didn't, when he came out of high school to go to Incarnate Word, that's where he started his career before he went to Washington State. Obviously, I didn't know who he was. And apparently I'm not the only one, because Ward says he only had one offer coming out of high school, which is insane. You go from one offer to a future NFL quarterback, because he's going to be drafted next year. Cam Ward has come a long way. He was asked to describe Miami's offense and the way he fits in with Shannon Dawson's offense. He described Miami as an air raid just in the huddle, he says. And, he did. It seems like he and Shannon Dawson have a good relationship. He and Dawson, he says Dawson allows him to be himself, and he allows Ward to coach up receivers on what he sees. It sounds like Ward has quite a bit of freedom in the offense, which that's the sort of guy you're pretty eager to give some freedom to. He talked about the tight end room, which, again, I can't emphasize this enough. That's been a unit that's really stood out in practices so far. The tight ends have really stood out. I understand if you kind of scoff at me when I say that and you have a see it to believe it type of attitude, since there was almost no production in the passing game from the tight end room last year. I think they combined for 18 catches and 1 touchdown, the entire position group. So if you don't want to believe me that the tight ends are doing well in practice, you don't have to. I'll hope we all see it for ourselves come game days, or even in the spring game in a couple of days. But he described Miami's tight end room as the best one that he's played with so far in his college career. He says Elijah Lofton can do it all. He described him as a Deebo Samuel. He mentioned that Elijah Arroyo is an absolute dog, and Arroyo is someone who looked good in practice today. We'll talk about that. There's some Pac-12 connections now for Ward. Cam Ward, formerly of Washington State, and one of the defenders that he's trying to beat with his throws in practice is Mish Powell, who's the former Washington safety. So they used to be rivals, and now they're teammates. And he says, he kind of joked about this, he goes really hard in practice against Mish Powell because he never beat Mish when Mish was at Washington. He was at Washington State. He went 0-for-2 against Washington. He says he's glad he doesn't have to play against Powell anymore. Ward, and this is really important, I think this is one of the reasons why, when Ward ultimately decided not to take the plunge into the NFL this year, why he decided Miami was a good spot for him. Guys, so much of that in my mind, not only with the culture, but the offensive line. That's a big part of it. Didn't have good offensive lines at Washington State, was running for his life the last couple of years. I don't know if his offensive line was any good at Incarnate Word. I didn't study their FCS tape, but he's got a strong offensive line this year. And Ward, and again, this goes to show you how much research like he did on Miami before he decided to take his talents to the 305. When he watched film of Miami's offensive line from last year, even though Miami was credited with giving up, I think, 12 sacks last year, which is still pretty good. One of the better teams in the country in only giving up 12 sacks. But he says the offensive line really only gave up 6 sacks is what he said. Was super impressed by that. So it's another reason why you want to take these guys out to dinner. Right? You want them to really trust you and want to protect you, because you don't want those dinners to dry up. So I have some notes. I was hanging out with our guy, the truth teller, Bruce Warner, and former Miami Hurricanes defensive tackle Mark Caesar at practice today. I'll have some of my takeaways for you. And folks, we're opening up this episode to questions. We've gotten some awesome questions from the Locked On Canes insiders. Among things we're going to answer today, somebody asked me, hey, if Miami's supposed to win 9 or 10 games, what are the losses going to be? We'll talk about that. Someone thinks Daryl Porter deserves more respect, and I agree with that. Talk about ACC and conference realignment, talk about Trevante Citizen, talking about which Miami players might transfer out and who might transfer in. We're only getting started, my friends. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. And you know I'm only getting started on the GameTime app. Guys, this is the only ticket app I use. Whether I'm looking for tickets, weeks, months in advance, or even better, I'm looking for those last-minute deals. You actually get the best deals on the GameTime app when you wait till the last minute. Finally, a world where procrastination is rewarded. I've been waiting my whole life for this. Folks, GameTime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the GameTime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. I haven't actually decided yet for sure. I've got a friend who's going to be in town who wants to go to the Marlins game tomorrow night. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to go, but I'm not in any rush. Like I could decide, early afternoon tomorrow. I'm going to get great deals on tickets on the GameTime app. That's just the nature of it there. So, folks, they give you views directly from your seats, which is awesome. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, the lowest price guarantee. GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Folks, you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. I love the all-in prices. Folks, they give you the best total. They give you your full total up front, I should say, with no surprises at checkout, which is so important. None of those surprise fees. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Folks, as we're going to be answering questions from the Locked On Canes insiders, become a Locked On Canes insider. All you have to do, click the link in the show description below. Try it free for 14 days. You get text messages directly from my phone to yours and vice versa. One-on-one questions. We're going to answer some of those on the show today. I give you guys practice updates, recruiting and transfer portal scoops. We're going to be all over the spring game on Saturday. So become a Locked On Canes insider. Again, click that link below. Try it free for 2 weeks. And then if you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. We give you a lot of added value there when you become a Locked On Canes insider. So some of the things that stood out to me at the latest Miami Hurricanes practice, I mentioned Ward talking about this being the best tight end unit he's played with so far in his 4-year college career. This will be his 5th year coming in. And I continue at tight end. I'm seeing good things today, especially from Riley Williams in practice, getting a lot of prominent reps. Elijah Arroyo also looks really good. I remember seeing, I think it was like a 7-on-7 coach or something who didn't know who number 8 was. That's Arroyo switched to number 8. And he's like, who's number 8? That guy looks huge. That's Elijah Arroyo, who was looking good out there in practice today. Elijah Lofton. I've seen him a lot, maybe mostly in recent practices, working at running back and getting carries there. And he's had some carries that kind of make your jaw drop. And you have to sort of wonder, hey, depending on what happens, if Miami doesn't bring in a transfer running back, and if, God forbid, Fletcher is not ready to start the year, you might have your top 2 guys. AJ Allen is another one who will be ready for fall, but he's missing spring. But I could see a scenario where Elijah Lofton and Chris Johnson, who also had some really good runs this week, where those could be like your top 2 running backs to start the season. I know a lot of people would say, and I'm not going to disagree, that a true freshman early enrollee tight end, if that's your starting running back, probably not a good thing. But then at the same time, Lofton's out there turning heads every single day. So, I don't necessarily think he's the answer at starting running back this coming season, but Lofton, who's also made some really good plays at tight end. Ward even talked about his one-hand catches, two-hand catches, can do whatever. So wherever you line this guy up, he's a football player. Elijah Lofton is a football player, and he's going to make plays for you no matter where you line him up. I spent some time taking a close look at the defensive line during drills, and I got the closest look I've gotten so far at Cole McConaughey, who had been starting to generate a lot of buzz in recent weeks. He wears the number 44, true freshman, early enrollee out of the state of Alabama, defensive end, and he and Ruben Bain were both working drills. They were working on techniques with Jason Taylor. They were getting some, close work with him. And I'll tell you, McConaughey, he's been a consistent performer in practice, and he looks the part, okay? I thought Jakari Brown had some good throws. He seems to be connecting a lot in practice with Michael Redding. And, Cam Ward has been, he's been consistently very good throughout spring, to the point where I think he can help bring Miami's offense to new levels. But something you notice about the competition levels out there on the field, when Ward is on the field with the first team offense going up against the first team defense, you definitely notice the pass rush. And now, not to say the offensive line doesn't win their share of battles. I'm just saying Miami's pass rush, I'm expecting good things from them because they really go after him. Limited contact. They're not tackling to the ground. They usually get the plays get blown dead if someone gets in the backfield. But you definitely notice the first team pass rush, I think, is something that is going to live up to, if not exceed, our expectations. They've been looking pretty tenacious there at the line of scrimmage. Let's answer some of you guys' questions. We get a question from an insider who says, hey, I keep hearing that Miami should win 9 to 10 games this season. Who do you think our losses will be? I'd like to say no losses, right? If you win the college football playoff, what would that be? Would that be 16-0 now would be how you do that? So 16-0, but no. Going into the season, I can tell you, and this is all going to change week to week based on how the teams actually play. But if I'm just going by preseason hype and handicapping, I think there's definitely 2 games, and maybe only 2, where Miami would be a betting underdog with everything we know in April. They're going to be an underdog at home against Florida State. They'd be a home dog. Maybe that'll change if Miami starts the season really well, but I expect Miami to be a home dog against Florida State, and I expect Miami to be a road underdog against Louisville. We already know, according to preseason lines, because a few games have been released, Miami is actually, I think, a 1.5 favorite at Florida. So even on the road, they're favored. You could see a scenario where at this point, Miami could be favored in 10 out of the 12 games that they play. And I think the 2 where it's safe to say they'd be dogs are home against FSU and on the road against Louisville. So, if you're saying, hey, if Miami could win 10 games, who would the losses be to? The pragmatist, is that a word? If I'm taking a pragmatic approach, I'll just say it that way. I would say, the odds would say Florida State and Louisville, but that's not the Miami we know. The Miami we know, even if they did find a way, and I hope they do, to win 10 games this year, they'll probably beat one of those 2 teams, and then they're going to lose some ridiculous game, to maybe Syracuse at the end of the year. They're going to lose a game that they should not lose. And, and Syracuse's new head coach, good transfer portal, recruiting well, all that good stuff. But Miami would probably win one of the really difficult games, and they would find a way to lose some ridiculous games. So we'll see how it plays out. But thank you for the question. Dat Dude 239 says, does the ACC and college football hate Miami so much that Daryl Porter Jr. did not get mentioned for any honors this year? 0 touchdowns given up, he says, was the least targeted DB in the Power 5, but no recognition given. Sounds a little haterish to me, he says. I think Daryl Porter Jr. should have a huge year and hopefully gets his recognition so those 4-star and 5-star recruits take a more serious look at Miami. Listen, I think Porter deserves more recognition, and I think you maybe partially answered your own question there when you talk about fewest targets that he faced. I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of the people who review highlights and stuff, you don't really notice Daryl Porter a lot because they're not throwing a lot in his direction. And I hope that for whatever lack of recognition DP got, Miami's star cornerback, I hope he uses that as motivation, has a little chip on his shoulder to come out and having an even better year this year. So just to reiterate some of what you're saying about statistically how good Daryl Porter Jr. was last season for Miami, here are some of his Pro Football Focus rankings from last year. Now, this is how he ranks among 183 ACC cornerbacks last year. Daryl Porter had 447 total defensive snaps, which is a pretty high number, had an excellent 78.3 Pro Football Focus grade. I think you classified that as excellent. 80 and above is elite. So the overall grade was 78.3. The tackling grade was 81.3. That was 7th in the ACC. By the way, the overall PFF grade was 12th in the ACC out of 183 cornerbacks. His coverage grade was 77.7. That was 15th in the ACC. 22 targets faced, 0 touchdowns allowed. It's a pretty darn good year. So, he's got one more year at Miami. Hopefully he starts racking up those postseason honors we would all like to see. Got a question about Trevante Citizen, if he'll ever get back to his old self. Got a question about the receiving corps. Has someone emerged as the number 3 guy? And also got a question about, hey, you remember when, about a year back, we were talking about potential on-campus or closer to campus football stadiums. Has that died off? We're not done yet, folks. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. And I know you're keeping it locked to FanDuel. Guys, we've been winning money. We've been having so much fun on America's #1 sportsbook. It's playoff time now, coming up in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all in an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you guys so much for being here. So a couple more, several more actually, questions we want to answer today. We get this one from the original Cat 5 Kane. With all of the positive reports coming out that Trevante Citizen is improving, and even Mario Cristobal saying that something clicked last week, why does and I'm going to redact this. I'm going to leave because I don't want to sound like I'm picking on anybody. He says, why does a certain media outlet believe that Citizen will not contribute anything this year and he won't ever be back to his old self? This outlet is also expecting him to transfer. Do they know something that all of the other reports and Mario doesn't? Thanks. Okay, some people think that Citizen, because I get these comments a lot on our YouTube channel that, why would Miami consider bringing in a transfer running back when Trevante Citizen, he can be the dude that if Fletcher from his Liz Frank injury, if he needs more time, Citizen can be that dude. I don't go that far because, for a young man, for all of his physical tools, and he's got we're going to answer a question about this in a little bit. Like Trevante Citizen, he looks like an NFL player, like a future NFL player. He's lost so much time due to injury. I take it day by day with him, and I think anything he can provide this year, I take it as a bonus, right? And obviously, if Citizen can put everything together, and if things keep clicking for him, can end up being an excellent collegiate running back. I also don't feel like you can't count on him now to be your featured back because he's missed so much time. But then the other side of that, if anyone out there thinks that he'll never be back to his old self and he's never going to contribute at Miami or anywhere else, I think that's a foolish assumption. I don't know. I don't know why anyone would say that, because we have seen some positives from him in practice. He hasn't primarily been the quote unquote featured back. I mean, Chris Johnson has gotten a lot of burn this spring. Elijah Lofton at running back has gotten a lot of burn this spring. So Citizen is still, working his way back from a difficult series of injuries to his knee. So I'm very patient with this one. And if you're asking me, is he going to transfer? I have no idea. I certainly hope not. Because, he's invested a lot of time at Miami and their coaches have invested a lot of time with him. I want to see that relationship keep going. And if Trevante Citizen is going to have like this amazing comeback player of the year type story, I want it to be right here. I want it to be at the U. I want it to be with the team that recruited him and that he committed to and enrolled in out of high school. So, I don't jump to conclusions either way. We get a question: Has anyone emerged as the number 3 wide receiver? I believe Isaiah Horton has. There have been a number of receivers that have had very good moments throughout spring. We've talked about JoJo Trader has been excellent. Ray Joseph has stepped up his game in a lot of different ways. Nye Carr has looked really good. Seen some good from Shamar Kirk as well. But I think Isaiah Horton, he's the one to me that is most consistently getting those prominent reps. And I think he's going to be that third starting wide receiver. Jacoby George, who's done well. Xavier Restrepo he's been a revelation here at Miami, had an excellent year last year. Those are your top 2. And I believe Isaiah Horton is number 3, but I also believe that there are some players that are pushing him every day in practice. So I like that competition, but Horton's my guy. Someone asked, do you have any other names of players entering the transfer portal? No, I don't. I don't have names. Even if I had some, I'd be hesitant to throw rumors out there because, it's not fair. It's not fair to anyone. But honestly, I have no idea. All we know right now is, Henry Parrish is transferring. And we know that Nigelique Kelly is going to enter the transfer portal. We don't have any hard information on anyone else. I have said on this show that if I were a player who knew I was going to transfer, I would announce or leak it or announce it early as possible, just to kind of, to get the vibes out there. So there may be some players who are going to just kind of finish out spring and then see where they stand after the spring game. I'm sure there's going to be some meetings, held frank meetings with players after the spring game to kind of understand, where they sit in the pecking order and whether they can play here or not play here. But no, outside of Nigelique Kelly and Henry Parrish, I think there will be several others. I don't know who they are. We'll find out. We'll all find out together. We get a question from Mike who says, hey, why has the new stadium proposal for Tropical Park that was pitched by John Ruiz seemingly lost traction? Has Ruiz completely abandoned the project? Is he proactively seeking alternative locations for the project? And if so, what is his timeline? I think that the stadium idea for right now is either dead or it's on the back burner. I don't think there's anything happening there. As far as the reasons why, I don't know if that's a Ruiz thing or like the landscape of college football thing, because there have been some interesting points brought up with the way that NIL is becoming so more and more prominent nowadays with, in terms of recruiting and transfer portal, that there's some, folks who cover college football very, very closely who have said, when it comes to the money and donations, it's becoming more of an NIL thing than like facilities thing, that maybe more money is going into name, image, and likeness these days than is going into upgrading facilities. So I don't know if the landscape has anything to do with that. And also, folks, let's be real here. Anytime the stadium ideas are thrown out there, I think all of us understand, number one, how difficult it is to get any project like that off the ground in Miami-Dade. How difficult that is. I mean, you need private money, but there's so many hurdles with the politicians and the commissioners to get the land. And forget about doing it in Coral Gables. Coral Gables is so restrictive with venues. Like, you cannot do it in Coral Gables where the campus is located. Maybe you can do it a mile or so outside of Coral Gables, but there's still so many political and financial hurdles you have to jump through. I don't think we're anywhere close to Miami getting their own stadium. So my answer always is, if you want to pack Hard Rock Stadium, instead of blaming Hard Rock Stadium for that, if you're competing and winning championships, competing for and winning championships, people are going to show up. So let's focus on winning first. And then maybe if they consistently put a winning product on the field, then we can talk about, a stadium closer to or nearby campus. Got a question. This is an interesting one. Who are the guys with NFL bodies? Someone says. Now, all right, I'll take a stab at this. This is me spitballing. So I'm definitely going to leave some guys out. So don't take this as gospel. Like, don't say, hey, this is Donno's list. These are the only players on Miami who have quote unquote NFL bodies. But Jakari Brown, he's built like an NFL player. Offensive tackle Markel Bell. I mean, he's gigantic. 6'8". He's filled out like Markel. Every time I see him in person, I'm just impressed with it. He's playing pretty well also, which doesn't hurt, but just with his stature, I'm so impressed by Markel Bell. Jalen Rivers is another one. That's a future NFL offensive tackle. Trevante Citizen, who I mentioned before. I think Isaiah Horton is getting there. He's already got the height at 6'4". He looks like he's filling out as well. Bobby Washington, Popo Aguirre, a couple of linebackers with NFL bodies. Cole McConaughey, scary big for a true freshman. I was really impressed when I was a few feet away from him today. Riley Williams is getting there as well. He's the young tight end. He's already got the 6'6". He's got a big frame. I don't remember how much he weighs. I think he weighs like someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's like in the 260s now. So he's really filling out Riley. Tommy Kinsler, he's gigantic. Akeem Mesidor is one. Mish Powell is a defensive back, but he's pretty big for a safety. So those are the guys that I'm going to throw out there for that. All right, we got a couple more questions. Didn't have time for today. We can answer them next time. So thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. And guys, remember, we're teaming up now here on Locked On Canes with Canes Connection. We're going to start doing weekly, maybe multiple weekly player interviews. So guys, support what we do here on Locked On Canes. Make sure you support Canes Connection. If you're looking to sign up on any of their 6 membership tiers, we've got a code, and it's LOCKED, LOCKED. Make sure you use our code LOCKED, and you're going to get 20% off your first month. And doesn't matter which tier you're on, 20% off your first month with our code LOCKED. And we will talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.